"You can't stop me from seeing my own son," declared Jessica, my ex-daughter-in-law, standing at my door with a folder of documents and a lawyer at her side. "I have legal rights." I looked at the man in the expensive suit holding a stack of official papers, then at the woman who had abandoned my grandson 12 years ago. The same face, only older, with the same determined expression she always wore when she wanted something. "Rights," I repeated, keeping my voice calm. "Interesting." Behind me, I heard Lucas's familiar footsteps coming down the stairs. My 17-year-old grandson with Down syndrome, who had become a national sensation last week when he sold his accessibility app for $5 million. "Grandpa Rich, who is it?" Lucas asked, his voice carrying that genuine curiosity that always melted my heart. Jessica tried to push past me. "Lucas. My baby, it's Mommy." Lucas frowned, confused. "Mommy? But my mommy lives in heaven with Daddy." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Richard, we have documentation here proving that my client has maintained regular contact with the child over the years. Monthly visits, financial support, weekly phone calls." I took the documents, leafing through them quickly. They seemed impressively detailed. Dates, amounts, even photos I didn't recognize. "Interesting papers," I muttered, handing them back. "My name is Richard Thompson. I am 71 years old and have raised my grandson Lucas on my own since he was 5 years old. Everyone said I was crazy. A retired widower trying to care for a child with Down syndrome? Impossible." They were wrong. Jessica pushed the documents toward me again. "As you can see, I never abandoned Lucas. I've always been there, always contributed financially. And now that he has this success, I want to resume full custody." Lucas approached me, holding my hand the way he always did when he was nervous. His fingers intertwined with mine with the confidence of someone who always knew I would be there. "Grandpa, she looks angry," he whispered. "Don't worry, kid," I replied, squeezing his hand. "Let her talk." The lawyer opened his briefcase again. "We also have evidence that you may not have been the best guardian. Lucas should be in a specialized institution, not being forced to develop software." I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my expression neutral. 12 years. 12 years since this woman had disappeared from her own son's life, and now she was returning at the exact moment Lucas was gaining national recognition. It was no coincidence. "Institution," Lucas repeated, looking at me with wide eyes. "Grandpa, what's an institution?" "Nothing for you to worry about," I replied, running my hand through his brown hair. "How about you go upstairs and continue working on your new project? I need to talk to these people." Lucas nodded, but before going upstairs, he looked directly at Jessica. "Do you have the Palavra Bridge app? I made it. It helps people like me communicate better." Jessica forced a smile. "Of course, dear. Mom downloaded it as soon as she heard about it." That was a lie. The app had only been released a week ago. When Lucas went upstairs, I turned to Jessica and her lawyer. "Come in. Let's talk." They settled into my simple living room, Jessica looking around as if she were evaluating a property. The lawyer organized the documents on the coffee table, each paper strategically positioned. "Mr. Thompson," the lawyer began, "my client is prepared to be generous. She doesn't want to traumatize Lucas with a lengthy court battle. If you voluntarily agree to transfer custody, she will allow supervised visitation." Supervised visitation. In the house Lucas had always known as home. "What about the money?" I asked directly. Jessica feigned surprise. "What money?" "The $5 million Lucas earned selling his app." "Well," she said, adjusting her hair, "as his mother, I naturally need to ensure that this money is managed responsibly. A special child like Lucas cannot make financial decisions on his own." Special child. As if Lucas were incapable of understanding his own success. The lawyer slid another document across the table. "This is a financial management agreement. Very standard for minors with special needs." I picked up the paper, reading it quickly. Jessica would have complete control over all of Lucas's assets until he turned 25. "Interesting," I muttered. "And where exactly have you been for the past 12 years?" "It's all documented," Jessica replied quickly. "As you can see from the records, I've been in constant contact. I just respected Lucas's wish to have you as his primary caregiver. Lie after lie, stacked like cards in a house about to collapse. From upstairs, I heard the familiar sound of Lucas typing furiously on his computer. Probably working on his next project, oblivious to the fact that the woman who abandoned him was trying to steal not only his future, but his very identity. I'll need time to review these documents, I finally said. Of course, the lawyer nodded. But not too much time. We have a hearing scheduled for Monday. 4 days. They were giving me 4 days to hand over the child I had raised as my own son. When they left, I went upstairs to find Lucas. He was sitting at his desk, surrounded by 3 monitors, his fingers dancing across the keyboard with a precision that still amazed me. "Grandpa," he said without looking up from the screen, "that woman was lying." "How do you know?" "She said she downloaded my app when she found out. But the app only tracks downloads by geographic region for the last 7 days. She's not on the list." I smiled. My brilliant grandson, always 3 steps ahead. If you're enjoying this story of how a grandfather and his extraordinary grandson stood up to the greed of an opportunistic mother, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. "Lucas," I said, "remember all those files you always insist on keeping organized? I think we're going to need them." He finally turned to me, his eyes shining with that intelligence that everyone always underestimated. "I'm already organizing everything, Grandpa. She has no idea what she's up against." But while Jessica was probably celebrating her perfect legal strategy, she had no idea that she was trying to deceive the most meticulous documenter I have ever known. And what we would discover in the coming days about her true movements over those 12 years would change everything. The next morning, I sat on the porch watching Lucas feed the birds that visited our yard. Even at 17, he maintained the same morning routine he had since he was 6, 20 seeds for the cardinals, 15 for the sparrows, 10 for the doves. "Consistency builds trust," he always said. Jessica didn't understand that when she abandoned him. I remembered that terrible day in December, 12 years ago. Lucas was 5 and had been diagnosed with Down syndrome just 6 months earlier. I was making lunch when Jessica appeared at the door, carrying 2 suitcases and an expression of despair. "I can't do this anymore, Richard," she said, pushing the suitcases inside. "He needs things I can't give him." "Jessica, he's your son," I replied, confused. "We can find resources, therapists." "You don't understand," she cried. "I had plans. College, a career, travel. How am I going to explain to my friends that I have a son who's different?" Lucas was sitting on the living room floor, organizing his toy cars by color, oblivious to the emotional storm raging around him. He rocked gently, humming a tune only he knew. "Look at him," Jessica said bitterly. "He doesn't even recognize us as a family." "He's 5 years old and processing a world that wasn't made for him," I replied. "He needs patience, not abandonment." "Patience?" She laughed bitterly. "Richard, I'm 23. My life has just begun. I can't sacrifice my future for someone who will never be normal." "Normal." That word hit me like a punch. "Your husband died serving his country," I said, my voice trembling with contained anger. "Lucas lost his father at 4. And now you want him to lose his mother too." "He'll have you," Jessica replied, already walking toward the door. "You're a retired teacher. You have time, experience with special children. Having classroom experience is not the same as raising a child on your own." But she was already leaving. She stopped only once, turned to Lucas, and said, "Bye, Lucas. Mommy has to go away for a while." Lucas didn't even look up from his toy cars. That was the last time he spoke to his son until the day before yesterday. In the first few months after the abandonment, I fought the system. Social workers questioned my ability to care for a child with special needs as a single man in his late 50s. They visited monthly, observing every interaction, documenting every step forward or backward Lucas took. "Mr. Thompson," said social worker Carla Martinez during a particularly difficult visit, "Lucas is not developing at the expected rate. Perhaps a younger family with specialized resources." "He is making progress," I insisted. "Yesterday he said thank you for the first time." A single word does not constitute significant progress. But I knew it was. Lucas didn't speak because he was afraid, not because he couldn't. His mother's abandonment had created an emotional barrier that would take years to break down. I spent nights studying Down syndrome, communication techniques, specialized teaching methods. I turned our home into a totally structured environment, strict schedules, unbreakable routines, organized spaces that gave Lucas the predictability he needed to feel safe. It took 3 years before he called me Grandpa for the first time. It took 4 years before he let me hug him when he was scared. It took 6 years before he asked about his mother. "Where's my mom, Grandpa Rich?" he asked one night as I read his favorite story. "She left, Lucas. But you have everything you need here with me." Does she not like me because I'm different? My heart broke. How do you explain to an 11-year-old that some people can't love beyond their own limitations? You're not different, Lucas. You're special. And special people sometimes scare people who don't understand how to be special too. Now, watching Jessica try to reconstruct a narrative where she was the devoted mother, I felt the same anger that burned in me that day in December. Her lawyer called in the morning. "Mr. Thompson, my client would like to clarify some issues regarding the last 12 years. She maintains that there was regular, albeit discreet, contact, respecting the informal custody arrangement." "What arrangement?" I asked. "The verbal agreement where you took temporary care while she established herself professionally. She has documentation of monthly financial transfers, weekly phone calls recorded by the phone company." Lies piled on top of lies. And where has she been working during those 12 years? Initially in Atlanta, then Los Angeles, building a career in digital marketing. Professional demands limited her ability to be physically present, but she never abandoned Lucas emotionally. I hung up the phone before saying anything that could harm our case. Lucas appeared in the kitchen, carrying his laptop and a determined expression that I recognized immediately. It was the same face he made when he found bugs in complex code. "Grandpa, I researched Jessica Cooper over the last 12 years." I sat down at the table, prepared for what he had discovered. She was in Atlanta for 8 months in 2011. She worked at 3 different jobs, all of which she was fired from for excessive absences. She moved to Los Angeles in 2012, where she worked as a waitress at 4 different restaurants. No job lasted more than 6 months. Lucas clicked through several screens, showing employment records, address history, criminal records. In 2015, she was arrested for credit card fraud. 2017, lawsuit for rent default. 2019, she filed for personal bankruptcy. I stopped breathing for a moment. "Grandpa, in the last 12 years, Jessica Cooper has been unemployed 60% of the time, evicted from 7 different apartments, and sued for unpaid debts 14 times. How did you get this information?" "Public records, social media, background checks. All legal and accessible." Lucas looked at me with that seriousness that still surprised me. "She never sent money because she never had any. She never called because she constantly changed her number, running from creditors." "What about the documents she presented?" "Fake. Poorly faked. The dates don't match her jobs, the amounts are incompatible with her declared salaries, and the signatures," Lucas smiled slightly. "Well, my verification system will have fun with those signatures." I looked at my grandson, this brilliant young man who had turned his difference into a superpower, and felt a fierce pride. Jessica thought she could show up after 12 years of total abandonment and claim the success she never supported, never nurtured, never deserved. She was about to discover that underestimating Lucas Thompson was the biggest mistake of her life. "Lucas," I said, "I think it's time we show her exactly who you've become without her." He nodded, his fingers already dancing across the keyboard. But what Jessica didn't know yet was that Lucas hadn't just meticulously documented his own life. He had also documented her absence. And the evidence he had collected over the years would not only prove that she was lying, it would reveal exactly why she had really come back. On Monday morning, Jessica's lawyer called again. This time, his voice carried an arrogance that made me clench my fist around the phone. "Mr. Thompson, my client has decided to be even more generous. She is willing to split custody 50-50, allowing Lucas to spend weekends with you." "How kind of her," I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "There is just one small condition. Jessica needs to be named legal administrator of all of Lucas's financial assets until he turns 25. It's standard procedure for people with intellectual disabilities." Intellectual disabilities. As if Lucas hadn't just created an app that revolutionized communication for millions of people. And if I refuse? Then we'll see you in court on Wednesday. And Mr. Thompson, I must warn you that we have very compelling evidence of negligence on your part. Lucas should be in specialized care, not being forced to work on software development. I hung up the phone before I said something she could use against me. Lucas appeared in the kitchen, carrying a stack of papers and wearing that focused expression that meant he had discovered something important. "Grandpa, I need to show you something." He sat down at the table and spread out the documents. They were screenshots from social media, financial records, and what appeared to be text conversations. "Remember when you said Jessica never called? Well, I I legally accessed the phone company records for the last 12 years. I looked at him with admiration and a touch of concern. "Lucas, you can't hack." "I didn't hack," he said quickly. "I used public API interfaces and Freedom of Information Act requests. All legal." He paused. "Mostly legal." He pointed to a detailed spreadsheet. "These are all the phone numbers registered to Jessica Cooper since 2011. 17 different numbers. 17. She changed numbers constantly. Look at the dates." Lucas traced a line with his finger. Each new number coincided with an eviction, a dismissal, or a lawsuit. He continued flipping through the papers. "But here's the interesting part. In 2016, she tried to call you." My heart stopped for a moment. "Tried." "One call. It lasted 17 seconds. On December 23rd. I remembered that date. It was the day before Christmas Eve. Lucas was 11, and we had spent the day baking gingerbread cookies, our annual tradition since he arrived. I didn't answer any calls that day. Because she called the old number. Remember you switched carriers in 2015 after that problem with fake bills being sent to your house? I vaguely remembered. Billing issues, strange numbers appearing on the bill. "Grandpa," Lucas said softly, "she tried to call once in 12 years, to the wrong number, and gave up after 17 seconds. I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. A ridiculous part of me had always wondered if she had tried to come back and somehow couldn't find us. But wait, there's more." Lucas pulled out another set of documents. "Look at these text conversations." They were screenshots of messages between Jessica and various people. The dates were recent, last week. "How did you get these?" "Her Instagram account isn't private. She posted these screenshots yesterday, trying to gain sympathy from friends." Lucas pointed to a specific conversation. "Look at this one." The conversation was between Jessica and someone named Brandon. "Jessica, I'm finally going to get my son back and the money he earned." "Brandon, I thought you said you never abandoned him." "Jessica, that's what I'll say in court, haha. I have documents proving that I was always there." "Brandon, fake documents?" "Jessica, they'll look real enough. I need that money, Brandon. 5 million. I can pay off all my debts and finally have the life I deserve." "Brandon, what about the boy?" "Jessica, he won't even notice. Special kids are easy to manipulate. I'll put him in a nice facility where he'll be well cared for." I felt my vision darken with rage. Institutionalize Lucas. As if he were a problem to be solved, not a brilliant person with dreams and ambitions. "There's more," Lucas said, his voice lower now. The next conversation was between Jessica and her lawyer. "Jessica, how long until we get full control of the money?" "Attorney Walsh, as soon as the court appoints you as administrator, you'll have complete access. Given the boy's special circumstances, it will be easy to argue that he needs financial supervision." "Jessica, what about the old man?" "Walsh, we'll use his age against him. 71 years old, caring for a child with special needs all by himself? We can paint that as easy neglect." Lucas looked at me with eyes that seemed older than his 17 years. "Grandpa, she doesn't want to know me. She just wants my money." "I know, Lucas. I've always known." "Then why do you look sad?" I sighed, running my hand through my gray hair. Because part of me always hoped that maybe, just maybe, she had changed. That she had realized the mistake she made. Lucas stood up and for the first time in years, gave me a full hug. His arms wrapped tightly around me, and I felt tears burning my eyes. "You're my real family, Grandpa Rich. You always have been." In that moment, something changed inside me. The sadness I had carried for 12 years, the sadness that Lucas had been abandoned, that Jessica had missed the chance to know the extraordinary son she had raised, for a family that could have been, turned into something harder and more focused. Determination. Jessica wanted a fight? Then she would get a fight. But she had made a fatal mistake in underestimating both Lucas and me. That afternoon, I made my first strategic phone call. To Dr. Sarah Chun, the neuropsychologist who had been treating Lucas since he was 6. "Richard, I'm so glad to hear from you. I saw the news about Lucas. I'm so proud of him. Sarah, I need a favor. I need all the documentation of Lucas's progress over the years. Reports, tests, evaluations, everything." "Of course, but may I ask why?" I explained the situation. The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long that I thought the call had dropped. "Richard," she finally said, her voice icy, "is this woman trying to institutionalize Lucas?" "That's her plan. Over my dead body." Sarah's voice was charged with a rage I had never heard before. "Lucas is one of the most functional and independent young people I have ever worked with. I have 17 years of documentation proving not only his competence, but his exceptional development under your care. Would you testify in court?" "Richard, I would beg to testify in court." My second call was to the former principal of Lucas's school, Robert Martinez. He was retired now, but he had fought alongside Lucas against bullying and prejudice during his high school years. "What does this woman want?" His voice thundered over the phone. "Richard, this boy is a genius. Do you have any idea how many of my former students call me to tell me how Lucas's app changed their lives?" "How many?" 472 at last count. 472 young people with special needs who now communicate better because of your grandson. And she wants to put him in an institution. By dinner time, Lucas had finished compiling what he called the complete defensive dossier. 17,000 pages of documentation, he announced, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Medical records, psychological evaluations, academic history, software development records, testimonials from app users, comparative analysis of children with Down syndrome in family care versus institutional care. "How did you do all that in one day?" "I didn't do it today. I've been compiling it since I was 13. Lucas looked at me with that seriousness that sometimes made me forget he was still technically a child. "I always knew that one day someone would try to separate us. People always underestimate people like me. Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to worry. And because," he hesitated, "because I wanted to prove that I can protect our family as much as you have protected me." That night, after Lucas went to his room, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the stars. The phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello? Richard? It's Melissa, Lucas's physical therapist. I heard about the situation." Melissa had worked with Lucas from ages 7 to 15, helping him develop fine motor skills that now allowed him to type faster than most programmers. "How did you find out?" "Sarah called me." "Richard, you need to know that half the therapists in town are talking about this. We're not going to let this happen." "We?" "The entire team that has worked with Lucas over the years. Occupational therapists, speech therapists, psychologists, specialized teachers. We are a community, Richard. And Lucas is our shared success." When I hung up, I realized I was no longer fighting this battle alone. Jessica had spent 12 years building a narrative of abandonment and neglect, hoping that no one would remember or care about the truth. She didn't know she had declared war on an entire community of people who had dedicated their careers to proving that children like Lucas could not only thrive, but could change the world. And at the center of that community was a brilliant young man who had spent 4 years meticulously documenting every aspect of his life, preparing for exactly this battle. While Jessica was probably celebrating her legal strategy, we were building something much more powerful than forged documents. We were gathering the truth. On Tuesday morning, our home became the operations center of a military campaign. The dining room table was covered with stacks of documents organized into sections carefully labeled by Lucas: medical records, psychological evaluations, educational history, technological development, and a special section titled Evidence of Neglect. Dr. Amanda Chen arrived first, carrying 2 boxes of files documenting Lucas's development since the age of 6. "Richard, I reviewed everything last night," she said, organizing the documents on the table. "We have 17 years of neuropsychological evaluations proving not only competence but exceptional growth. Lucas's IQ tests show consistent progression. At age 10, he tested 125. At 15, 142. Lucas looked up from his laptop. "I didn't know I'd taken so many tests." "Your grandfather insisted on regular assessments," Dr. Chen explained. "Not because he doubted you, but because he wanted official documentation of your progress in case anyone questioned your ability." I felt a tightness in my chest. Even without consciously knowing that this day would come, my protective instinct had guided me to build a fortress of evidence around Lucas. Robert Martinez arrived next, carrying folder after folder of school records. "Lucas Thompson was one of the most determined students I've ever had," he announced, placing the files on the table. "Look at this. Average grades of 8.5 over the last 3 years of high school. Participation in the programming club. Volunteer tutor for other students with special needs." "I was a tutor?" Lucas asked, confused. "You helped Tommy Rodriguez with math on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And Lily Peterson with science on Mondays." Robert smiled. "You didn't call it tutoring. You said you were just helping friends." Lucas processed this for a moment, then returned to his computer without comment. It was typical of him not to realize the impact he had on other people's lives. Melissa Wright, the physical therapist, arrived with a laptop and a prepared presentation. "I'm going to show the court video of Lucas at age 8 trying to tie his shoes versus him at age 15 typing complex code. The progression of fine motor skills is remarkable." "Wait," I interrupted. "You have videos of Lucas at age 8? Richard, you asked me to document everything. You said that someday we would need to prove that therapy works better than institutionalization." Melissa opened her laptop. "I have 400 hours of video showing his development." I didn't remember asking for that, but apparently my younger self had been more visionary than I realized. At 10 in the morning, our lawyer, David Kim, arrived to review our arsenal of evidence. He was known for never losing cases involving the rights of people with disabilities. "Impressive," he murmured, leafing through the documents. "In my 20-year career, I've never seen such complete documentation. You've basically created a complete developmental biography." "It was by accident," I admitted. "It wasn't an accident," Lucas said without taking his eyes off the screen. "Grandpa always said that people like me have to prove ourselves twice as hard as other people. He taught me to document everything from an early age." David looked at me with admiration. "Mr. Thompson, you created the perfect defense case without knowing you were creating it." At that moment, my phone rang. It was Jessica's lawyer. "Mr. Thompson, my client would like to make a final offer before the court." I put it on speakerphone so everyone could hear. "She is willing to split custody 70% for her, 30% for you. And split the financial assets 50-50. "Split?" David repeated, disbelief in his voice. "She wants half of the $2.5 million Lucas earned? It's a fair deal considering she's the biological mother and now has the financial stability to properly care for Lucas." Lucas stopped typing and looked at me. He made a hand gesture, our secret signal that we developed when he was little and wanted to tell me something without others hearing. "Mr. Walsh," I said on the phone, "I'm going to need to discuss this with my family and my lawyer." "Of course, but we don't have much time. The court hearing is tomorrow." I hung up, and Lucas immediately began typing furiously. "Grandpa, look at this." He turned the screen toward me. It was a search on Walsh & Associates, Jessica's law firm. The firm was under investigation for document fraud in 3 different cases over the past 2 years. They specialize in cases where documentation is questionable, Lucas explained. Basically, they create fake stories for people who want to appear to be victims. David leaned over to see the screen. "That explains the quality of the forged documents. They have experience." "There's more," Lucas continued clicking. "Jessica has no financial stability. She's living in a 400-square-foot apartment in Los Angeles. 3 roommates, all with a history of debt. How did you find that out? She posted photos on Instagram yesterday. Geolocation was enabled. I cross-referenced the address with public housing records. Melissa shook her head, impressed. Lucas, you're a born detective. I'm not a detective. I just pay attention to patterns that other people overlook. Dr. Chun looked at David. How much of these investigative talents can we use in court? Everything, as long as it's obtained legally, David smiled. And it seems that Lucas is very careful about legality. During lunch, while the adults discussed legal strategy, Lucas called me out to the backyard. Grandpa, can I tell you a secret? Of course, Lucas. I knew she would come back. I felt my stomach tighten. What do you mean? Ever since I started winning programming awards, I knew. People like Jessica always come back when there's money involved. Lucas sat down on the swing I built for him when he was 7. That's why I started preparing everything 4 years ago. Preparing what? The verification system I sold wasn't created by chance. It was specifically designed to detect forged documents related to custody and visitation. Lucas looked at me with that seriousness that sometimes scared me. I set a trap, Grandpa, for anyone who tried to lie about our family. I felt a mixture of pride and concern. Lucas, that wasn't your responsibility. Yes, it was. You protected me when I was little. Now it's my turn to protect you. That afternoon, Jessica called me directly on my cell phone. Richard, we need to talk. Just the 2 of us. About what? About Lucas. You don't understand the pressure I was under 12 years ago. I was young, scared, without support. But I've changed. I've grown up. Jessica, you've had 12 years to grow up and change. You never called, never visited, never sent a birthday card. I wanted to. But you changed your number, you moved house. Jessica, we've lived at the same address for 15 years. And the phone number only changed once, for 2 months. Silence on the other end of the line. Look, Richard, let's be practical. Lucas needs a mother. He needs someone young who understands the modern world. He has a family. He has a whole community of people who love him just the way he is. But I'm his mother. I have rights. Rights are earned, Jessica. They're not inherited. She hung up. At 6 in the afternoon, David gathered us together for final preparations. Tomorrow, they're going to try to paint Lucas as vulnerable and you as opportunists. They'll argue that a child with Down syndrome can't make complex financial decisions. Lucas raised his hand. Can I answer questions about my application? You can and you will. We'll let you explain exactly how you created WordBridge and why you decided to sell it. What if they say I'm incapable of understanding money? David smiled. Lucas, can you explain how you invested part of the money from the sale? 50% in diversified index funds, 30% in government bonds, 20% in a high-yield savings account for emergencies. Lucas recited it as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I also established a $500,000 scholarship fund for young people with Down syndrome who are interested in technology. If you're following this journey of a grandfather and grandson facing an unfair legal battle, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that true family is not defined by blood, but by unconditional love. Dr. Chun shook her head in admiration. That level of financial planning is beyond most neurotypical adults. So our strategy is simple, David concluded. We let Lucas be Lucas. We let his competence, intelligence, and character speak for themselves. That night, after everyone had left, Lucas and I sat on the porch as we had done every night since he was little. Grandpa, are you nervous about tomorrow? A little, I admitted. Are you? No. Lucas looked up at the stars. I know I'm going to present facts. Facts don't lie. People lie, but facts don't. What if the judge doesn't believe the facts? Then he's not a good judge. Lucas turned to me. But he will believe them. Because we've built something real, Grandpa. And truth always wins over lies in the end. That morning, I received a text message from an unknown number. You don't know who you're messing with. Give up now or you'll regret it. I showed it to Lucas in the morning. Grandpa, do you know what this means? That Jessica is desperate? It means we've already won. People with solid arguments don't make threats. They make presentations. As we got ready to leave for court, Lucas checked his systems one last time. All set, Grandpa. 17,000 pages of documentation, 4 hours of video, 47 testimonials from people who know us, and a verification system that will expose every lie they tell. At the front door, I stopped and looked back. Our simple home, where we had built a life together, where Lucas had grown from a frightened child into a bright, confident young man. Ready? I asked. Ready, Lucas replied. But as we drove to court, we didn't know that Jessica had prepared one last surprise, a witness she believed would destroy our case completely. Someone from Lucas's past who she thought would testify against me. What she didn't know was that this same person had secretly been one of our greatest allies for years, and their appearance in court would not destroy our case. It would seal it forever. In the courtroom, Jessica sat next to her lawyer with the confidence of someone who believes they have a winning hand. She had dressed carefully, a conservative navy blue blazer, her hair pulled back in an elegant bun, subtle makeup that made her look like the devoted mother she would pretend to be. We call our first witness, Walsh announced. Dr. Patricia Morris, child psychiatrist. My stomach dropped. I didn't know this woman. A gray-haired lady approached the witness stand. Jessica smiled at me maliciously. Dr. Morris, Walsh began, did you evaluate Lucas Cooper in 2013? Yes. I recommended immediate institutionalization. The boy was clearly being neglected by his grandfather. Lucas squeezed my hand. He whispered, Grandpa, she never met me. Dr. Morris continued, children with Down syndrome require specialized care that elderly men cannot provide. David stood up. Objection, Your Honor. We have no record of this evaluation. Documents can be lost, Walsh retorted. The doctor's memory is clear. It was then that Lucas stood up calmly. May I ask a question, Your Honor? The judge hesitated. It's irregular, but proceed. Lucas looked directly at Dr. Morris. Doctor, on what date exactly did you evaluate me in 2013? March 15th, she replied without hesitation. Lucas picked up his laptop. Interesting. Because on March 15th, 2013, I was at Nashville Children's Hospital undergoing surgery to correct a heart defect. The screen displayed complete medical records. I was hospitalized for 6 days. Dr. Morris turned pale. Furthermore, Lucas continued, projecting a new screen, Patricia Morris lost her medical license in 2012 for falsifying reports. She wasn't even a licensed psychiatrist in 2013. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Walsh tried to stand, but Lucas was already presenting more evidence. Now, about the documents my birth mother submitted. Lucas clicked through several screens. My verification system analyzed every signature, every date, every claim. That's inadmissible, Walsh protested. Actually, David interjected, it's legally obtained digital evidence. Proceed, Lucas. Document 1. Jessica claims to have visited in December 2013. But here are time-stamped photographs from our Christmas that year. Images appeared on the screen. Note that there are only 2 people in all of the photos. Me and Grandpa Rich. Jessica began to shift nervously in her chair. Exhibit 2. Claim of sending $500 in April 2015. Lucas displayed bank records. Here is my grandmother's account at that time. 0 deposits from external sources. But note this withdrawal of $400 on the same day, to pay for my occupational therapy. Exhibit 3. Weekly phone calls. Lucas displayed records from the phone company. 17 different numbers registered under Jessica Cooper's name over the last 12 years. 0 calls to our house from any of those numbers, except for one 17-second attempt in 2016 to our old number. Walsh was clearly panicking. Your Honor, this is legitimate evidence, the judge said firmly. Continue, young man. Lucas turned to Jessica. But the most interesting part isn't the fake documents. It's why you came back now. He clicked to a new screen showing screenshots of text conversations. These are your messages to Brandon Kemp, posted publicly on your Instagram account. I'm finally going to get my son back and the money he earned. Jessica stood up abruptly. That's invasion of privacy. It's public information that you posted yourself, Lucas replied calmly. Including this conversation with your lawyer about how to use my Down syndrome to gain control of my assets. The judge looked at Walsh with obvious disgust. Lucas presented the final screen. Your Honor, for the past 12 years, I have meticulously documented my life. Not out of paranoia, but because people like me have to constantly prove our competence. I have 17,000 pages of evidence proving that Jessica Cooper completely abandoned me and only returned for the money. Jessica finally exploded. He's just a special needs child. He can't manage millions of dollars. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Lucas looked at her with genuine sadness. You still don't understand, do you? You didn't lose me because of my Down syndrome. You lost me because of yours. As Jessica tried to process her own words thrown back at her, I realized that my brilliant grandson had done more than win a legal case. He had turned 12 years of rejection into definitive proof that some people simply don't deserve the love they despise. Judge Harrison needed no deliberation. Considering the evidence presented, custody remains entirely with Richard Thompson. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for perjury and document falsification. Jessica collapsed in her chair. Her lawyer Walsh was already packing up his papers, clearly abandoning the sinking ship. 6 months later, our life found a new rhythm. Lucas expanded his company, hiring 16 young people with cognitive disabilities. Grandpa, neurological diversity isn't a defect. It's a superpower, he said during the inauguration of the new office. Jessica served 2 years of probation and 500 hours of community service at a center for people with Down syndrome. The director called me after 3 months. Mr. Thompson, she's completely changed. She asked to extend her volunteer hours. I didn't answer when she tried to call me twice. Lucas graduated at 18 as the top student in his class. During his speech he said, "True family isn't who begets us, but who chooses us every day." In the audience, I saw the faces of all the people who had supported us over the years. Dr. Chun, Melissa, Robert Martinez, David Kim. A community that proved that differences are strengths, not weaknesses. Today, I watch Lucas programming in his office, surrounded by a team that reflects his vision, that ability is not measured by conventional standards, but by determination and heart. Jessica tried to steal from us out of greed. She ended up giving us the opportunity to prove that underestimating special people is the biggest mistake anyone can make. If this story of a grandfather and grandson who turned abandonment into triumph touched your heart, subscribe to the channel. We have more stories that prove that justice always wins, especially when it comes from the brightest minds. Yesterday, Lucas handed me an envelope. Inside was a $1 million donation to Down syndrome research in the name of Jessica Cooper. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, Grandpa. It means turning pain into purpose. My grandson, who was once considered incapable, now teaches the world about infinite capability.